Hi, everybody. My name is Tabitha Mahmira. I'm the founder and CEO of EJA Foundation, an organization that is dedicated to combating and eradicating sexual violence in East Africa. I am so honored and grateful for this opportunity to be here with all of you. I know we all wish we were in person and just look across and see each other and feel the energy that has brought us all here. But I guess we'll settle for this and just enjoy each other's backgrounds for now. Hopefully that changes pretty soon. I do want to thank everybody first and foremost, all of you who show up every day for survivors like me and children who are still going through that right now. So thank you for all you do. Thank you, Jennifer, and all the founders, everybody who's been working really hard. Sage, you have been a superstar just responding to all of us. So everyone who is part of this, I want to take a moment and just honor you for your bravery, for your courage, for your hard work. It's because of you that we are all here, and it's because of the work you do that one day my goal in prayer is that we see a world free of childhood sexual abuse. So with that, I want to talk about three things, which are the pillars, not only of this symposium, but of all the things that we are working toward when we think about a world free of sexual violence against children. And those are prevention, healing, and justice. When I think about prevention, we know that if we're not stopping the leak, right, we will forever be pouring out water. We'll be responding until the day we die, in the next generation and the next generation. It will never end. So that is really the foundation of this work if we're ever to see success in ending this. So prevention is important to me. It is important to all of us that we have to look at. This quote that I really love, and I don't even know who said it, was that we are choosing what we don't change. And when it comes to this issue, we don't even want to think about what that looks like. How can you say you're choosing childhood sexual violence? But if we're not taking the steps to stop it, to prevent it from happening, this is not new. This issue, it's exciting that globally we're coming together. We are bringing all our forces. We're trying to stop working in silos. And my colleague in Shiro Danila is one of those forces that are trying to really bring each and everyone on this issue. So that's exciting. On the other hand, it is really sad that in 2021, we still have to write letters to our legislators to convince them that this has to stop. The laws have to be passed, the policies have to change. So that just shows how much work we still have to go. And when it comes to faith leaders, when it comes to activists, all of us have a role to play in our own spaces, right? But if we are not changing this, stopping this, as a society, we really have to look in the mirror and agree that we are choosing to live this way for our children, for our future. And that's not okay. And I know that's why you and I are here working every day so that we intentionally, actively stop and change this culture. So how do we do that? That has to happen, right? On all at the same time. All these things have to keep happening because we know survivors, victims also are here with us. So we have to heal the ones that are already harmed as we are preventing from others having to endure what we know is possible, the trauma. So when it comes to healing, that looks very differently for each and every one of us. Some people get well into their late adulthood, never have touched that part of them. I'm one of those. I was in my, when was that? In my 20s when I went to Uganda. And all through my life, I'm in clinical psychology. I was really intrigued by healing of the mind, but I convinced myself that I'm being called by the history of my country of origin, Rwanda, which went through a genocide. And all that complex trauma. So I knew I wanted to go back and help and change. And it's all about everybody else because I'm good, right? I got the skills. So I got this. Until I sat across that 9-year-old who had been assaulted the day before. And here she was. Everybody knew, but for whatever reason, poverty, hopelessness, gender, you name it, it was in the way of her healing. She didn't know how to reach out for help, even though she spoke about it. I didn't. And looking in her eyes and telling her what she needed to hear from a therapeutic point of view and what to do, to me, she became my push, my North Star, so to speak, to healing, right? And for me, what that meant was going to therapy in the United States. That's not accessible to everyone. Some people have shared stories around where their healing was about hearing somebody else put language to this. Language is so important, especially when it comes to children, because how can they express and talk to you about this thing that has happened if they've never heard about it before? And that's where you all come in, especially faith leaders. Normalizing this conversation that if and when it happens, children know that they are not alone, that we all don't have to hold on to this thing till in our late 30s and 40s and 60s, because we know trauma manifests in so many ways, in our spirituality, in our physical health, in our education, in our careers. We don't want to live in a world of hurt people. And so if church leaders were to speak about this, if schools were to speak about this, not only are we doing prevention, we're also validating, which is one of the core pieces for a survivor, for a victim, is being validated that what happened to you. These 3 phrases every survivor would want to hear. I know I did. It is not your fault. I believe you. And how can I support you? And if we each showed up from that space of validation and support, we really could heal each other, the world, and change the trajectory of all this violence against children. Lastly, justice. That's a tricky word. The way some people look at justice, if you're a person of color, if you're coming from a poor background, justice looks different for everybody depending on where you are in the world, what your bank account says, and who you're connected to. But it shouldn't be that way, especially when we're talking about children. And what has happened in this space is that because of this silence, that I call it the baton, right? So I refer to batons, think of it in a relay, and we're all handing each other batons and taking off in this relay of life. And on a systemic level, the batons that's been handed down in child sexual violence has been that of protecting the perpetrator, that of silence around this whole issue, shaming the person who is hurt. And those are some of the batons we need to drop like yesterday. And that's how justice can really thrive. That will look like making the survivor, the victim, the center of the issue. That's the person we need to pay attention to. How do we support them? How do we help them heal? And then it's justice also for this person who's a perpetrator. We know that there are complex, right, around perpetrators. Some of them have been also hurt in the past, and hurt people hurt others. We know that. However, look at how we have attacked some of the deadly pandemics or epidemics in this country. It is illegal for somebody who's HIV positive knowingly have unprotected sexual encounters with somebody else without their knowledge. In COVID, once you know that you have been exposed, you don't even know that you have it yet. You've been exposed. You need to quarantine, and we need to get you out of community so they can be safe. Now that's justice. That person is also being kept safe, given what they need to heal from whatever they need to heal from. But while they're doing that, they don't have to expose the rest of the community. They don't have to create more victims. Now that's justice. It holds the person accountable, at the same time protecting the ones who are harmed, who are healed. And that is how we can change and hopefully end. Because my job, my hope, the reason I stay up at night and wake up in the morning is that I want to see a world before my life ends where we no longer have to talk about this, where we can all come together the way we are right now and say, do you remember when we had to convince the world that this is a problem? Remember that? Oh, silly yes, right? I hope that each and every one of us, my call to action on this, normalize this conversation. That's where prevention, that is going to be the end of child sexual violence. We need to talk about it the way we educate our children around dangers of smoking, sex. Oh, well, that has a lot of work to do. But all the things, COVID, our children didn't wash hands and sanitize and wear masks more in 2019. And now everybody does that without even thinking twice. It's become normalized. We've modified that behavior. And that's what we need to do here. We need to teach each and everyone, boys and girls, men and women, one, that they are worthy. These girls, these boys, the kids, they are valued. They are worth fighting for. And they're looking at us to make that decision, to make intentional daily steps to eradicate sexual violence toward them. Speak about it, validate those who have been affected, and hold accountable those who have perpetrated. And that is how we can live to see a world free of sexual violence toward children. And that is how we're going to tell the next generation that we did our part. Thank you again for all you do, each of you. Now let's go out and end CSA. Blessings.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Joseph Williams, and I am a clerical abuse survivor, and by profession, a forensic clinician, management consultant, and also very blessed to be a special advisor to Cardinal Joseph Tobin and the Archdiocese of Newark. I'm also a parishioner in a church called the Church of the Little Flower, which is on the very western part of the Archdiocese of Newark. And as Cardinal Tobin likes to joke, it's out on the frontier. But maybe the frontier is really an apropos word right now for this symposium. In Pope Francis's most recent book, Let Us Dream, he talks about fraternity. And he says that fraternity today is our new frontier. And what does that mean? Well, I think it's really the essence of about this symposium. It's really about coming together to discern, to talk, to share, and especially for the essence of this particular symposium about healing and prevention of childhood sexual abuse. I can identify deeply as a victim survivor. I am so grateful for this invitation to Jennifer Wortham and all of her tireless work, and to all of you to embrace this journey at this arguably historic moment in the life of the church, regardless of faith tradition, to really understand and to heal the brokenness of those who suffered terribly, like I did, from sexual abuse. My remarks today are really about forgiveness and shame. And I believe that forgiveness and shame is really a clinical and a spiritual tale. Clinical because people suffer deeply psychologically, terrific trauma from being abused. And that clinical trauma needs to be healed psychologically, emotionally, and also spiritually. Now, it's a spiritual tale because oftentimes the abused were in fact abused in places of worship, associated with men and women of worship, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, other faith traditions. For me, I look to the scripture of Luke to best understand this journey. That image of the Good Shepherd that I'm sure all of you are aware of, captured on paintings all over the world, of that little lamb across the shoulders of Jesus Christ. And Luke says, and when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. Victims have been lost, terribly lost. I was lost. And in that lost, that feeling less than is really shame. And there's no greater pain than shame. All of you need to be good shepherds. Good shepherds bring healing. Good shepherds put the victims over your shoulders. And if you do that, like so many did for me, men and women of faith, lay men and women, you can become a survivor. And survivors are released from this shame. This piercing shame can be released. And the only way to do that is really, I believe, through forgiveness. Because forgiveness transforms our brokenness. Very hard to do. Very hard to forgive those who abused us. But I had to. On the 100th birthday of my priest abuser, I went to his gravesite and I let it go. I told him that I had to move on. I forgave him. And I told him that I knew that God still loved him. And I can't describe to you immeasurably the freedom, the interior freedom that I experienced from letting that go. And as good shepherds, we need to help those victims that we come across in our lives to let go, to somehow forgive, so they can feel the freedom that I have felt. When I think about that image of the shoulder, I think of the stations of the cross, and especially that fifth station when we know about Simon of Cyrene. Simon was a stranger in that city, on that road to Calvary that Jesus Christ was on. And in that moment, Simon was capable of lending his shoulders to the one whose own had given out, of offering his strength to the one who had nothing left. Jesus Christ had nothing left. Can you imagine that? And yet a stranger took his cross, took up the cross, which Jesus could no longer carry. Such a mystery of the divine and human of Jesus Christ in my faith tradition. And as healers of health for victims, I believe we must be like Simon. We must take on the cross of victims in order for them truly to be survivors like me. And we must do this for all sexually abused children, and increasingly too for vulnerable adults in our midst. There's probably no better way to do this. And I pray that this symposium really embraces this fully, is that you must listen to the voices of victim survivors, their stories. They can be healed. You can be healed even more in your own faith journey by listening to the stories of victim survivors. We need to teach them, foster for them, promote for them forgiveness, like those who've done that for me in my life. I don't mean exoneration. There has to be accountability. There has to be justice. But if we can forgive, if we can somehow embrace victims in a way that they can let go and forgive their abuser, they can feel the interior freedom that I have felt. And I continue to feel one day at a time in this world, in this life. You know, the prophet Joel, I think, says it so well when he writes, "Even now, says our Lord, return to me with a whole heart." Broken hearts need to be whole. Return to me with a whole heart means that we as good shepherds, we as healers, need to really touch those broken hearts. And the way to do that is to speak the truth. If we do that, the truth not only sets victims free and becomes survivors, but sets you free as well. Because I believe the truth sets us all free. Amen to that. Amen, amen. May this symposium go forth with that message of hope, of truth, and of forgiveness. Thank you for this opportunity. God bless you all. Amen.
Hello, everyone. I am Ashley Cook, and I am the CEO and founder of Faith to Confront. We are a consulting agency that helps pastors and ministry leaders protect children from sexual abuse and learn how to care well for survivors of abuse. As a survivor of clergy, sexual abuse, and a woman of faith, I believe that our faith does play a vital role in the recovery and healing process for survivors, but more is required. Faith alone will not protect children from sexual abuse, and faith alone will not bring healing. Ministry leaders should be equipped with the tools and the resources to help create a safe environment for children in their churches and communities. With the appropriate training and education, we can prevent child sexual abuse. And while we should put every foot forward and make every effort to prevent child sexual abuse, we should also create a safe place for survivors to heal. Unfortunately, some ministry leaders have missed the mark when it comes to aiding the survivor after their disclosure. Maybe they didn't know what to do, and so they decided to do nothing. And although leaders normally have good intentions, their good intentions did not align with good action. So the survivor was left feeling as though they were going to have to navigate through this process of healing alone. And I believe that not knowing what to do is not a valid excuse for doing nothing. I believe that it's time to take action and learn how to help survivors navigate through this healing journey. I believe it's time to take action to put certain things in place to prevent child sexual abuse from happening altogether. So today, I would love to go over some practical steps that ministry leaders and pastors and any adult really can learn or implement in their community, in their churches, in their houses of worship to prevent child sexual abuse and also care well for the survivors of abuse. So the first thing that I would always suggest is that it's important for you to learn the facts. It's important for you to know what the statistics are, to understand and identify the various forms of abuse that exist within your church community. In order to be able to confront certain issues, you need to know what they are. I believe that we have to learn what to do when a report of abuse has been offered to you as a ministry leader. You should know what to do. You should know why you should do it this way, and then you should learn how to do it. It's important to understand that someone disclosing sexual abuse to you is not just something that you take and you begin to give counsel for. There are some legal steps that you will need to take as a mandated reporter. Even if you are not a mandated reporter, if you're just an adult that is, you see something that's going on in your community, you're not a teacher, you're not a coach, you're not a pastor, you're not a mandated reporter, that does not mean that you cannot report. And that does not mean that you should not report something that you see. But as mandated reporters, it's important for you to understand the legal steps that you need to take when a disclosure comes to you. And then you should know what to do as far as being a pastor and as far as leading that family, whether it is a child's disclosure or whether it is an adult that has disclosed an experience that they had in the past. You should know how to care for them and help them with next steps after that disclosure. It's important for the body of Christ or the church to understand that you are not investigators, that you are not responsible or even equipped to investigate a crime that is out of your pastoral jurisdiction. It is something that should be handed over to the authorities to do their investigative work. Your job is to pastor. Your job is to help with the healing process and to walk the journey of healing with the survivor or with the family that has gone through certain trauma, the trauma of sexual abuse. I also believe that it's important for pastors to understand the importance of being trained and training your staff, and the importance of having background checks for every adult volunteer that encounters your church. It is not enough for just the pastor and the executive pastor to have a background check. Any person who is going to be engaging with children, there needs to be a background check. That includes all of your volunteers. We know that many of our churches thrive off of volunteers. We could not do the work successfully without our dedicated volunteers. So it's important to recognize that every volunteer needs to have a background check on file. They need to, of course, pass that background check. But on top of that, it's important that your adult volunteers are also trained, and not just trained in any old thing. We all know that we live in a day and age where there are all types of curriculum out there. There's all types of information and resources that are available. I always recommend you training your staff with evidence-based or evidence-informed training, because there is it has been proven that it is effective. That particular training or that curriculum has been proven that it is effective. It's not just about having the faith component. It's not just about having a curriculum that infuses Christ in it. We need so much more than that. It's important to recognize, and it's important to have evidence-based, evidence-informed curriculum. Every person that is on your staff, every volunteer, every person that interacts with an adult needs to be trained in the evidence-based, evidence-informed curriculum on child sexual abuse prevention. I recommend Darkness to Light, Stewards of Children curriculum. It is an excellent curriculum, and it gives you steps to take from A to Z so that you know how to prevent child sexual abuse. And it is a curriculum that has been proven, has been tested and proven to be effective in the communities in which it has been delivered. So it's important that you have that training. It's also important that you begin to build a community with other fellowships in your area. As a pastor, as a ministry leader, you are sometimes expected to have all the answers. And the reality is that you don't have all the answers. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't know how to help a survivor navigate through their healing journey. And when you say that, it doesn't make you less qualified to pastor or less qualified to lead. What it does is it shows that you are humble enough to say that I don't know what to do, but I am going to do something. And this is why it's important to have community. This is why it's important to build relationships with other fellowships in your community, because maybe you don't know what to do, but the next fellowship, they know exactly what to do. Maybe they have a therapy group, or they have something in place to help care for abuse survivors and to help support families who are going through this traumatic experience. And so what you do is you say, hey, I'm not equipped to handle this particular situation on my own, but I care about you as my pastor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a call, and I'm going to explain the situation to a fellow pastor that I know, that I trust. And if you don't mind, I would love to begin to engage them with you so that they can help you all navigate through this. And then as a pastor, it is not just a handoff where you send them someplace and you never check back in. No, continue to pastor them, continue to steward their trust and check in with them, and let them know that you're supportive, let them know that you're there, that you care, and just check in to see if there's anything else that you can do as a leader to help them feel comfortable, to help them feel like you're there for them. I think that there's so many things that we can do as ministry leaders and as pastors to not only prevent child sexual abuse from happening, but also be responsible for those who have come to us and have trusted us with their disclosure. And so those are a few steps that I advise for people to take, to know the facts, to know what to do after a report has been made, not just what to do as a pastor, but what to do as a mandated reporter. You also need to know that you are not an investigative body in a criminal matter. That is not your skill set. That is not your job or your responsibility. That is the authorities' job, and they will do their job. And if you want to follow up, feel free to follow up with them, but it is not your place to investigate a crime. It is your place to pastor and to care well for those who have been offended and for those who are going through this traumatic experience. And then it is important for you to make sure that you are trained, that every volunteer, every adult that interacts with any child is trained in evidence-based or evidence-informed curriculum on child sexual abuse prevention, so they know what to do, what to look for, they know how to respond appropriately, and they know how to implement these things to prevent sexual abuse from happening. And then lastly, understand the importance of building community, so that if you don't know what to do or how to handle something appropriately, you have no problem at all engaging someone else from a different fellowship and caring well for the survivor by helping them navigate through their healing process through community. So I appreciate all that you do to protect our children. I appreciate all that you do to make sure that survivors are cared well for. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to engaging with you all further.
My name is Maryam Sheikh Abdulkadir. I am from Kenya, and currently I live in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. I came here for studies, and I am still here. I have been an advocate for stopping violence against children for a long time. And my specific area has been on ending female genital mutilation. And in my longest time, I have used a religious-oriented approach to address this violence. And today I'm here to share with you what this approach entailed and how it can be used even for other violences. So this is just my story on how all this came about and how we can then use this approach for all others. So FGM for me is a personal issue because I am a survivor. I was taken through this practice when I was 6 years old. And because it's a norm in the community, it's something that every other girl is taken through or expected to be taken through. This was not something I ever questioned. While I was at university, I had what I call an accidental conversation one day with another Muslim, a sister friend of mine. You see, my community believes this practice is Islamic. Like there's at least this mild type. I don't know how mild that horrific practice can be, but that is what they believe, that there's this mild type that is Islamic. And of course, that's what I believed in, that's what I was brought up knowing, and that is what I grew up thinking was the way it was to be. And so this accidental conversation was about why we had such painful menses and why I was missing classes and I was getting sick. And then what happened is I told her, you know, we were not cats. I am not cat like your cat, because the narrative is every other Muslim girl is cat. It's only that the type differs. So I told her I was not cat in exactly the same way, because the narrative has been that every other Muslim girl is cat, but cat in the mild type. And the lady didn't know what I was talking about, and she was very shocked. She told me, no, she's not cat. Cutting girls and cutting their body parts is not Islamic. She's not cat. Her mom is not cat. Her grandma was not cat. And I was shocked. So it was my time to be shocked. How can you say that? But of course, I had no information. Basically, I had no one to ask that. And there's a question. There was a seed of doubt that was planted in my head. The question of who's on the right between she and I. And that is what you need sometimes when something is a norm, when something is widespread, when something is believed and held onto, like female genital mutilation in my community. You need something that can trigger that seed of doubt, that can just plant a seed of doubt, a trigger, a doubt. Just you begin to question the whole purpose. And so I knew that the information I have, that the fact that this thing was not Islamic would mean a lot to the community. That would be a conversation opener and a doubt creator and the thing that can create the conviction to stop this practice. People needed the information that this practice was not Islamic. So I set out and we talked with my boss at length, and we came up with a religious-oriented approach that we had to give this program and a religious face, an Islamic face, so to speak, although later it spread and became where even our Christian brothers and sisters formed their own network on addressing this harm from their perspective. But for us, it was because of the fact that when we were doing the research, for example, 86 or 90% of the community will tell you this thing is, we do it because of religious reasons. So we really had to unveil it. We had to unwrap it. We had to link it from Islam. So what the religious-oriented approach entailed was really questioning this practice, having two questions on the table. Does it have any basis? And the number two, does it actually go against other teachings? You know, so for us to be able to get to that, we needed to have religious scholars on the table. At that time, there was actually a fatwa in the part of Kenya that I come from. The year before, now when I joined this organization, they had the religious scholars sat down and said they have a lot of other priorities. The community is wallowing in so many other problems that FGM is not a priority. And it is true. In that part of the world, there is no water, there is no education, healthcare is poor, the people are hungry because of drought, animals die because they are pastoralists. So all because of this climate change, there's a lot of recurrent drought now. And yes, there were other priorities, it is true, but this was also a priority, especially for someone like me who had undergone this practice, who knew what it actually meant. Imagine a girl who is hungry, who is thirsty, who is sick, who has no education, and on top of that, she is cut. The little blood in her body is actually poured out, all because somebody somewhere thinks it is Islamic, or they are justifying it because it is Islamic. So for me, it was also a priority, only that the community now, that was a fatwa they made. And so it was very difficult to actually hold any conversations. So what did we do? We began with them. So what this approach entailed was really getting other Muslim scholars who are not from the community. One, because they wouldn't have the kind of norm these other community members have. They wouldn't have the baggage of, whatever cultural beliefs or narratives or scripts they were following. The only thing they would be looking at is now the Islamic scripts. Let's look at this thing. Why are you calling it Islamic? Why are you linking it to Islam? And so that is what we did. 2 scholars came on board as consultants. And I was not the one sitting and trying to discuss with the religious scholars. My role was just to introduce the practice, introduce the research, the thinking, what we found out, and then leave them with the question, is this Islamic or not? And then leave them for them to debate. And so when we were now mobilizing the religious scholars to be invited to the meeting, one, we took the most, we began with the most educated, because at the end of the day, when I sat down with the religious scholars, the consultants, they came to realize that there was a language issue. There was an Arabic language issue. There was an Arabic term that meant male circumcision that would always be used to refer to even the female cat. So so we needed people who were most educated, degree holders, diplomats, people who were very analytical and who would be able to. So we began with those and cascaded down. And one thing that I can tell you is it took time, and we also had to have small numbers. We didn't want like a room full of a big number of them. Imagine having 20 scientists in a room and wanting them to agree on a theory. So because of that fact, now we just wanted a smaller number so that, the conversation is one-to-one. Everybody, all the questions they have, they raise whatever issues that they have. So, because again, the whole agenda of end FGM, ending the female genital mutilation, was seen as a Western agenda, and this is a time we were coming into the early 2000s, and all the things that were happening in the 90s, and so there was also that political side that they didn't want to look like they were supporting a Western agenda. So we really needed a one-on-one discussion where people put out their heart and really questioned, is this an agenda that we can really be involved in? We were hoping that they would be able to take up the mantle. It would be so easy for them to include it in their sermons and talk. That would have been the easiest path, but it's really taken long. But I know, and at a personal level, each one of them was touched. Religious scholars do have a role in their different communities, and they are the very first people that people will turn to and come to in seeking what the truth is. Whatever faith people follow, faith is what gives people hope. It's what gives people comfort. It's what gives people grounding. And when it comes to healing, especially for me, that has been a very great part of healing. Just the fact of knowing that this thing has no basis in Islam. I knew I was lied to, and I knew I was cheated. And now I said my resolve is I don't want any other girl to be cheated and to continue hurting in the name of this lie. So now religious scholars are the first people would come to now confirm that, to get that comforting information, to get that healing, to get that hope rebuilt. So unless they themselves are aware and vigilant and know what the issues are, then how will they be able to guide? You know, many times we think they should just be able to put on their robes and their hats and take on the work. But let's not forget that they're also human. They also come from the same communities. They are brought up in the same norms, in the same narratives, in the same, belief systems that exist, aside from the religion that they are leading. So they need to be debrief them, and then engage them. And it's their peers who can engage them, someone who's also as knowledgeable as they are, to sit down with them and say, this that you are seeing this way doesn't even carry this meaning. It doesn't even carry the meaning of for example, the female cat. And so this is where I think we need to bring the whole debate. And for me, the objective of this symposium, I think, is really one that is really needed, especially for someone who comes from that background, and for the fact that many of these programs are run by non-governmental organizations, for example. Many of them have the banner, they are non-religious, and to be able to include a religious message like that, some might shy away thinking, well, but I want to urge them and tell them that it is just a strategy. It's just an approach. It's just something that would make your work easier. When you are in a certain community, whatever belief system that they have can help you enhance the programming. What we are saying is this is a strategy, and I hope it can help people come up with a lot of religious-oriented approaches to be able to address violence. It is worse when it is actually linked and embedded in the same system that is meant to protect and heal. So I think in conclusion, I really want to call upon every faith leader out there, and anyone listening to me today, to be able to really take up the mantle to address violence. Violence against children is rife in different forms. I am a surviving person who was undertaken through female genital mutilation when I was 6 years old. That's child abuse. And to imagine it actually happened because people think it is religious is even worse. And to date, there are girls who are still being taken through that. There are religious scholars who really are perpetuating this practice and still wanting to link it, even though the effort is there to delink, they still want to link it to Islam. And so I call upon all of you to please take up your mantle and really address child sexual abuse in all its different forms, and be able to make the religious institutions and the religion itself the safe haven that it has been meant to be. The onus is on you. Get educated. What are we really talking about? What is the harm that we're talking about? You know, for many people, they think whatever happens to a child, children outgrow. We have been shown on countless times, no, we do not. I have not forgotten the pain that I went through. I still recall the sound of that razor. That's trauma. This is a lifetime trauma that I'm carrying. So we cannot continue thinking we can ignore, we can be silent, and by being silent, the problem will not be seen. The problem is the hurt we are causing to a whole contingent of innocent human beings, and what kind of a world they are going to inherit and what kind of people they're going to be later. This is the role that you guys have been entrusted with. You are the people we come to seek guidance, to get information, so to speak, to get as representatives of what our different faiths actually carry. So when you are the people who are silent, when violence happens, when it happens within religious institutions, you don't talk. When it is done in the name of religion, you don't come up. When you are invited to the table, like we did, and some of them refused, they don't come. It just really puts a question on, then who are you serving? What is the purpose? So your purpose is guidance, and you have a very powerful tool in your hands. You stand on a very powerful platform, and you are on a very powerful pedestal. You know, you have been chosen to lead us on that platform. Please let violence be a subject that you discuss openly. You are ready to listen, get educated, get informed, speak from a very informed perspective, be analytical in trying to see what does my faith say and what is really happening, and so that every now and then a social norms change is about the consistency, it's about the commitment, it's about the continuation. This is what we need, continuously talking about this practice of either rape, of either defilement or child marriage or female genital mutilation, because we do have survivors who need to be reminded that there is hope and faith in their religions. And please, we want you to take up that and listen. When we speak up, we are not making up stories. It is real. We are struggling with real issues because of how we have been hurt and how we've been lied to. If I didn't have the faith that I have in my religion, it would have been so easy to say to hell, you've cheated me, but I knew it is not. And I was at a point in my life where I was able to now really differentiate. But how many people are you even losing by keeping quiet, by propagating, by not caring? Because when we are not talking about violence that is happening, then it just shows that we do not care. So we need to care. We need to give people the space, and please open up spaces, because anyone who is following a particular faith and anything that is presented as from that faith perspective is something that is very palatable to the people. So solutions from a faith perspective will be palatable. Solutions from the religious teachings will be acceptable, and solutions from the religious teachings will be able to be actionable by the people. So I pray and I hope we will be able to take up that mantle. And as survivors, we are here to support you with whatever you're doing, any information that you need. I, for one, this is my personal mission, to continue talking about this practice for as long as I live. And I hope that many of us can join, and especially faith leaders and people of faith, to be able to see a world that is healed from the troubles. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. Fulata Moyo. I will talk about a method of healing of traumatic memories that I was part of the developer with the religious communities in 3 countries. And this is a response to trauma caused by childhood sexual abuse and other causes. I'll start with my own story, and then I will, from that story, then I'll pick up on some of the journey of developing this kind of resource. So, in 2010, I was leading an intervention in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and this intervention was really focusing on how men could be part of the solution to the problem that they cause, i.e. in sexual and gender-based violence. And so we had an equal number of women and an equal number of men looking at transformative masculinities and transformative femininities. And part of the process was really to visit an existing response to sexual and gender-based violence. And so when we were going to this response that was run by a Christian organization in Chiang Mai, as we were walking in, this was a response to sex trafficking survivors. And as we were walking in, there was a girl who was coming in front of us, and without really actually preparing myself, I realized that just seeing her triggered memories of my sexual abuse when I was a child. And without warning, I was in tears, and I really had to act very fast. So I handed over the team that we were with, to a colleague who was working with me. And I went to the director of the center to find out more about this girl. And when I talked to the director, I asked who that girl was, and she said, oh, that girl is 14 years old. She was trafficked from Myanmar, and she was sexually exploited by the two transporters that took her, and she's 8 months pregnant. And I think without really actually rehearsing what next question, the question just came, like, what are you doing with her? And this director, with really good intentions, she said, we are a Christian organization, so we use scripture to help these girls to forgive their offenders and to embrace the baby that they are carrying as a gift from God. And tell you, I am a Christian who really believes in those principles. But he said in this context, it was to me like they were using the sacred text to silence these girls. They were not creating a safe space for these girls to wrestle with the questions they had, to talk about the fears they had and the pain that they were carrying. I mean, these were girls, young girls, who were exploited in all manner of dehumanizing manner, that really needed actually the space to talk about this and to struggle along and what to do. And because of that response, I found myself really exploring more on how sacred text can be read in a way that they don't silence the exploited people, but rather it creates an atmosphere where their stories could be the embodiment of what they are reading, and it helps them to talk about this and to wrestle with questions of advocacy and ending such practices. So I was very thankful that actually amongst the group that I was with, they were biblical scholars, and immediately, I mean, we started actually looking at some of those texts of terror according to Phyllis Treble, and so that we could actually use those texts to become tools for advocacy against sexual violence. And we had several examples in the Christian Bible. But over the years, I also interacted a lot with the people of other faiths. Like, we produced a book titled Sexual Violence and Sacred Texts that contain this one, that contains the reading of sacred text from Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. But this actually, this story of mine helped me actually also to realize the fact that you cannot suppress traumatic memories and think that you live without having to address them. And it taught me that no matter how long it takes, time doesn't heal until you are face to face with such. And at that moment, I also remembered the realities of fear, helplessness, the shame, the self-hate, the grief, the anger, and just like the overwhelming experience that I had as a child, having gone through that and not having a space to talk about it, and fearing that even talking about it actually would lead to me being blamed for something that I was not to blame, to be blamed for. So I discovered that actually of the 3 common responses, that's flight, freeze, or fight, I had adopted to fleeing, and I had frozen my memories in a way that now they were defrosting without warning. So I decided on 3 things. I decided that I will actually, for my own sake, and the sake of others, I would listen to similar stories of women and girls. And the second thing I decided was to embark on a journey of healing for me, so as to be able to be face to face with that reality that now had become a reality to me. And I also wanted not just to be healed for myself, but to be healed so that I can also be of a healing accompaniment to others. So in 2016, I received a visiting scholarship to go to Harvard Divinity School, and there I developed what I called components of ethics of care, which focused on active listening to women's stories. And between 2016 and 2018, I visited so many countries listening to the stories of women. These countries included countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, and so many others, not just in Africa, but even Italy, Ireland, the UK, and US, actually, and the Dominican Republic, India, the Philippines, more Thailand, and all that. But from all the stories that I listened to, 5 common components really influenced my way ahead of what to do. First was that women, more than men, live with traumatic memories caused by sexual and gender-based violence. The second was that with the global reality of normalization of gender-based violence, a majority of these women live with these memories with no chances of healing or seeking healing at all. And third, women who grow up in communitarian ethical contexts like I did and many other people, they find the individual psychosocial responses too individualistic and intrusive. They prefer rather a group therapy that is more community-based. And just like me, I also discovered that a significant number of survivors just require a safe space, active and affirming listeners, so as to embark on their journey of healing. And finally, I also discovered that women of faith still hold on to sacred texts as important manuals of life. And so after discovering some of the existing responses to trauma, including healing of memories from the Healing of Memories Institute, holistic trauma healing by Paul Boyle that focuses on the power of forgiveness, and healing and rebuilding communities, Hirok, which is from Burundi and Rwanda, and Singing to the Lions, which is by Catholic Relief Services that focuses on childhood trauma, and STAR, Strategies for Trauma Awareness and Resilience, that was born actually after the 9/11 attack in the US. And also I came across Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, the human search for meaning. So in 2018 to 2019, working with the World Council of Churches, I went to Nigeria, South Sudan, and Sierra Leone, and worked with religious communities to develop what later became the Healing Together as a resource for trauma healing, based on Christian principles, and but the theoretically based on the communitarian ethics as a community-based approach, and backed by the 3 principles of logotherapy, which are the freedom of will to find meaning to every experience of pain, and meaning of life. And so the Healing Together basically addresses some of these questions that I'll spell out, and it also provides a kind of accompaniment that I will also just briefly talk to, and then I will stop. So some of the questions that it addresses are: what is the value of my life? How can I live without giving up? Who can I talk to about my struggle that will not judge me or take advantage of me? What will happen if I continue suppressing the woundedness within? And so it creates a safe space of grace where even my story deserves a listener. My story is affirmed, my experience is given the justice perspective, and my violated dignity is reaffirmed. And it provides healing companions. The small family groups become part of the ongoing healing journey, and then you pair up the survivors. And it has a principle of nothing about us without us, which was basically built in Beijing 1995 World Conference by women, that the survivor is actually part and parcel of the process that defines the journey for healing. So it's not imposed, but if you listen to the voice of these survivors, and they determine how this journey will go. And in this manual, forgiveness is looked at as self-love. It is not forced on somebody, but through this journey, one sees that it's important to forgive. And because not forgiving is like you are drinking poison and hoping that it will destroy your perpetrator, but actually it will destroy you. So, but the challenge that we still wrestle with in the Healing Together is the role of punitive justice to perpetrators, so that impunity can be ended, and that the perpetrator is not defended, but rather it is the survivor that is focused on. This question still lingers on. Thank you so much.